Well, hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to another episode of the X Files, the divorce and separation podcast with me, Alex Wynn, family lawyer, and my esteemed colleague and friend, Liza Friedwell, also family lawyer, mediator, ex barrister, and a few other things besides.
Thank you. Yes, it's good morning for many, not good morning for all who have just been watching the World Cup.
Too soon?
Sorry, Alex, if you're wondering why Alex is looking like he's on his way to a funeral,
I am.
it's because England is out. But we're still here, and England might be out, but Alex is in. He's in the hot seat, and he's going to help you through today all things about what you can and can't say and shouldn't say in terms of text messages, social media, all those sorts of communication styles in your family law case. So,
And then we'll obviously get on to how Thomas Tuchel got it wrong after the first hour with his strategic substitutions that did not work.
do you know
But
what?
we might
Do you know
save
what,
that for
though?
another day.
Yeah, we can. But I actually was explaining this concept to someone recently. I was at a networking group and I said, put your hand up if you agreed with that referee's decision and you were happy with the result. Some people put their hand up and then put your hand up if you weren't happy and you didn't agree with the result. And anyway, and then small people put their hand up and said, well, that's what it's like if you are going through a family court process
Exactly.
and you have no control over what the decision is going to be, and the decision is made, and you're just going to have to sit and bear it like most of England today.
Well, like all of the other 47 teams in the World Cup that are
And
not
that's right.
Argentina, you have to cope with, we'll call FIFA is in our case, the Federal Circuit and Family Court of Australia. It is the body that controls everything. And if you find yourself in court rather than trying to settle things, well, you're out of control. Infantino is going to get you.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm not really bitter and twisted. We just stuffed it up in the semi. Okay, today is not, strangely enough, about the World Cup semi-final, as much as I would loathe it to be. It's about communicating
Mm.
in a family law context. And really, it's more about what not to do in terms of communicating with your ex and with other people, and how that can sometimes have a big effect on what's happening in your family law case. So before we get going, it's time for our usual throat clearing. This is me. I'm Alex. This is Liza. She's Liza. And we're just a couple of friends talking about family law and things around that space. This is not, absolutely not legal advice, because that needs to be tailored to your special circumstances. Much as everybody says, oh, this is what happened in that case, this is what happened in this case, you are unique. And your circumstances need the nuance of your own lawyer. So don't rely upon this as legal advice. This is just some general information that you may find helpful. If you
Mm.
do need legal advice, Liza's here and I'm here, and you may even have your own legal representative already. But reach out if you would like some help. Okay, that's my throat clearing done. On with today's topic, which is communicating in family law. So what are we getting at today, Liza? What are we talking about?
So what we're talking about today are things like social media, text messages, and other forms of communication that can trip you up. And when I'm talking about tripping you up, I'm saying things that can be proven very easily. So you might have a phone conversation, and you can say a lot of things to someone, or you might be in person. And that person would have to prove that you said those things. And in the family law world and in any sort of law world, it's very difficult to prove those things unless you have it in a document. And if you have it in a document, such as a screenshot of a text message or an email or a social media post or anything else, or I've even had cases where I've had radio hosts being in trouble for constantly criticizing their ex in the radio show. So it's those sorts of things that will come back and bite you.
Weaponizing a public forum against your ex. Wow, it'd be like
Totally.
a podcast. Now let's get on with our exes. No, not really. There are a few podcasts out there like that. People that are, they're moving a little bit away from a neutral perspective and it's a little bit personal attack. Do not do that. If you're going through family law, do not do that.
No,
The best advice if you're feeling very angry is don't send anything.
that's right. Don't do the
Not
11
that that's
p.m.
advice, that's
I'm
information.
going to send this message to my ex because he can't get away with this any longer. I'm going to say what I think. Don't say what you think. You need to think about what the judge will think if you got in front of a judge and the judge read that text message. So that's the first thing that I would be looking at is when you're about to hit that send button, double check and go, hang on a minute. should I really send that? And it goes for any sort of communication, whether it be in an email and just in life generally. I know I do the same thing. Sometimes I'll get really fired up about something and I won't agree with what someone has said. I will fire off a big angry response. And then I think, oh, hang on a minute. How's the judge going to read this? Am I going to be the one who gets into trouble because I've taken it too far in my retaliation or my response, or I've overreacted to something? How is that judge going to respond? And so before you hit that send button, before you put anything down in writing anywhere, whether it be in the form of a picture, you see all the time on social media, all the memes can
Mm.
Photoshop people. Like you see, still on the football, but you see Haaland's head and body and
Messi and Infantino,
contorted into everything.
the internet's alive with AI generated
Yeah,
imagery
that's
now.
right.
So if you factor in, then you're dealing with like a X relationship, the temptation to use your Groks, your GPTs, and all of the rest of those things
Mm,
to create fairly, malodorous images. It's going to be very tempting out there, isn't it? We're going to be
yeah,
seeing more and more of that. And I guess a suggestion would be if you have those images or you create those, well, don't. They're not going to help you when all's said and
they're
done.
not. They're definitely not.
I often say this, carrying around that anger is a little bit like carrying a lump of hot burning coal in your pocket. At the end of the day, it's your hand that's going to get burnt. Think about communication. Think about all of the array that we can communicate these days. You've only got to wander into your nearest shopping center or high street, and you'll see every other person gazing into the palm of their hand where they've got this little piece of technology with more processing power than it took to do the Apollo landings, and yet they order a pizza, right? It's just, we have this ability to communicate all the time, constantly, but we're not thinking about what we're communicating often enough.
No, and I think in a family law context, it's not that every single thing that you send as a message is going to be included and come up to bite you. Okay. Don't think that all the messages that you sent to your partner 10 years ago are going to come up, because in some cases they might, but in many cases, and more often than not, they're not going to come up. Because first of all, in order for a court to even properly look at it, those messages need to be relevant to the factual dispute that's in play. So you might have a case that's completely about property and completely about contributions and whether or not someone did some renovations and who paid for the renovations to the home. That might be the central issue. The fact that 10 years ago you guys had an argument about something completely unrelated and that both of you might have said something that was not nice to one another, you might have called each other names and said a few things, that's not going to be relevant to that dispute. So you're not going to be wanting to produce that sort of information and that sort of documentation to support your case. So the first thing you need to look at is that, are those messages that you're wanting to bring in, let's just assume that there are some nasty messages out there, are
They
they in
usually
fact
are.
relevant? Yeah, there's going to be. Whether or not they're publicised or if they've been sent to you, that's the next question. But to the extent that they're out there, is that in fact going to be relevant? And rather than going down that path of tit for tat, what I would normally do, I'd say, well, let's just get it thrown out because it's completely irrelevant.
How is it going to help a judge make a determination about what the property split should be? It's really not. If anything, it's going to harm your own case by dragging up irrelevant, sometimes scandalous almost, arguments from a decade ago. It's got nothing to do with the question in front of the court. So you bang on. The relevance is something which it's very important to say. Because this is where the objectivity of having an independent lawyer will help you. Because you're living your life and that's your experience with your ex, it's very hard to see beyond that relationship, to see it from outside of that relationship, and the anger that you feel, the way in which you feel you've been attacked or let down or rejected, let go, or whatever it might be. There's a lot of emotion in that relationship. By having the independent eyes of another person who's a legal professional looking at it, go, look, I know that it hurts. I know that you want to say those things, but this isn't the forum for that.
Mm,
Those are questions that you maybe raise with your friends in the pub in many years from now, or with your therapist, but you don't need to raise it in front of a judge because it's not going to do anything but make you look a bit crackers, and certainly it's irrelevant.
mm,
And you're going to get the ire of the court. Yeah, so relevance is huge. I like too what you said about the venting issue. If you are sitting at home, and we've all had clients like this. They're sitting at home, it's a Saturday night, maybe they're not seeing their kid and they're getting upset. Maybe the other parent is baiting them accidentally or on purpose,
Mm,
but in such a way that that person's sitting there feeling sorry for themselves. They send one message, and the first message might be absolutely innocuous and child focused.
yeah,
The next 17 over the course of the next hour, maybe less so. And then they follow on message after message. That's the problem, isn't it? It's not being
yeah,
able to control where you begin and you end your messaging. That what they say in those messages might not be horrible. They might not be spiteful. They might not be rude. But if there are multiple messages at
mm,
all times of day and night, it's overwhelming. And that's
yeah,
the sort of pattern that a court's going to have a look at and go, hang on,
that's right.
what's going on here? Are these people able to communicate? Why is this person constantly seeking the responses? Clearly, that must be making the other person feel either uncomfortable
Mm.
or maybe they're great. They're fishing off the dock for all of this ridiculous overload of information.
We find it a lot, particularly now that coercive control is such a big issue in family law matters, the emotional abuse. And that's where the courts will, in fact, trawl back through the records for the many years, because in order to prove coercive control, you can't just say, on this last occasion, he tried to get me to do something. That's not coercive control. That's just a request. You may not like it, you may not agree with it, but it's definitely not coercive control. You need to show that long pattern of behavior and a change of behaviors. So that's where, for example, if you have that history of these messages and on the face of them and by themselves, they might be okay. There might be nothing that's overtly offensive in those messages. But as Alex said, collectively and over a period of time, and it might be the fact that they're being sent at 2 a.m. It might be those real gaslighting. I'm going to use that word because everyone loves the word gaslighting these days.
Hardly
Um,
anybody's seen the movie.
Definitely not. And so, in terms of those sorts of things, they will write something very pleasant and very nice. But the underlying tone is more of a rubbing it in the other party's face, particularly if they've got the kids and it might be as simple as, oh, we're having a wonderful time and here's some photographs. And they'll be presenting their case to say, oh, look, see, I'm just including him or her. I'm just letting them know that we're having a great time and so that he's involved or she's involved in what's happening. But realistically what they're doing, they're just rubbing it in, rubbing salt into the wound. They're not there. They're not part of that fun experience, baiting that other party in order to try and get a reaction.
Yeah. And that's where sitting on your phone and not sending something straight away is super important.
Totally. That's where, the thumbs up emoji is such an underrated emoji. It can mean one of many things, and a judge is not, in my opinion, going to give any weight to the thumbs up emoji. They're not going to say that was a sarcastic thumbs up or that was that's a
Unless you're
genuine.
conveying a bereavement.
They have absolutely no way of determining whether or not that thumbs up emoji is going to be taken as sarcastic or genuine. So if you get one of those messages that are clearly trying to bait you, and to the extent that you're actually on your phone and you see that message, you have two options. You either can ignore it or you can just be polite and just do the thumbs up.
It's how one ends text messaging, really, isn't it? When you're in that conversation, you go, oh, I think we finished talking now. So it's just either that or it's that,
Yeah.
or it's that.
Oh, hang on. I lost the thing. That almost did like a one finger. I'm like, no, don't do the one finger.
No, preferably
I was
not.
trying to do the two fingers.
If you're dealing with French people, then of course do that, because that's just a throwback to the English archers still having their fingers. Well, it's the other way around, but I shan't do that on the podcast.
No, that's all right. So essentially, you do have to be very careful when you're talking about what sort of messages that you want to put out there.
But
You've
just
probably
to-
seen a few doozies in your time, Alex. What are some of the ones that has caught your attention over the years?
Oh, I think the volume has sometimes startled me, the extent to which some people send text messages that are really long and highly emotionally charged. And they're not necessarily attacking. It's more of an emotional outpouring that has nothing to do with the care for the children, or it has nothing to do with the property division that they're trying to work on.
Mm.
It's more about an elongated post-mortem of the relationship and everything that ever was done wrong to them. But I've seen these things. thousands of text messages
Yeah.
from one person to another. And that startles me that, well, who has the energy to do that for one thing? Don't you have another thing to do? Breathing, eating, sleeping.
Go pour yourself a glass of wine.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Or, well, not this month. It's dry January and I'm still being good.
January?
Is it dry January? Oh, God, it's July. It feels
Yeah.
like
I was
January.
gonna say, is
It's
that what
July.
the lack of alcohol you see all those,
That's what it
speaking of
is.
social media, you see those ones where people have said, "Oh, I tried not drinking alcohol and see what it's done to my body." It's like, no, it's done absolutely nothing apart from being the worst month ever.
It's
So
just, yeah. Well, exactly. I mean,
sends
now I've,
you a bit
I've turned
crazy,
this into an
obviously.
entire year-long thing, haven't I? Where were we? What were we talking about before dry January came up, and it was actually just dry July?
No, I just said pour yourself a glass of wine. That was
Pour
all.
myself a glass of wine. I shan't be doing that until the 1st of August at like 1 minute past midnight, and then I shall take care of that.
And then send everyone messages.
I have done that before with a bottle of Cooper's Pale Ale. Very nice it was too, after an October, that one. Let's talk about some of the platforms and how people communicate,
Yep.
because we are, as I mentioned earlier, we live in this age when everybody's got a smartphone. Most of us, laptops and iPads and tablets and desktops and all manner of ways of communicating with each other. And we have the social medias. You have, the Facebooks, the Instagrams, the Snapchats, everything out there. God help us, even things like LinkedIn can be surreptitiously dragged into what we're talking about here. There's no shortage of channels and platforms through the social media platform perspective for us to over communicate and to communicate about things that we really shouldn't. We should say, I mean, anybody that spends any time working in the family law sphere will know that there are laws against you communicating about ongoing family law cases. You can find yourself in some significant trouble with a judge and with a court if you are publicizing information about an ongoing court case.
Yeah.
Get legal. If you're about to do that or you've done that, you probably need to get some legal advice. In the meantime, do not do it.
And that doesn't even mean that that doesn't mean you're safe if you just don't name the person. You're
Are they
still, as
able to
long
be
as it's
identified?
identifying features that you can
Yeah.
work out, who someone else is talking about. So, for example, you might get on Facebook and have a big rant about a particular male who's just being narcissistic and all these other things and being a terrible father. And to anyone who knows you will realize that you are talking about your husband and the father of your children, most likely, if you're going through that situation. And
Yeah.
so,
If you're describing it to a class of people, and I mean, that could just be a handful of people reading your post on a social media post. So don't do it. It's a path of problem. But so we've got the social media platforms, and that's an obvious one to be very careful with the use of. Be judicious about that, if I can say that word. The other areas are, of course, our old friend email, going back to the early 90s. Well, it's just when I started emailing people, and it was on slates originally, and then it was paint cave walls and stuff. But you send your
well, you had tablets
emails.
back then.
Sorry.
You had tablets back then,
We
just
had
different type.
tablets, but you had to
You had to
scratch on with
engrave.
stone. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, and draw pictures of the mammals that we were trying to catch, the woolly mammoths. Um, the emails have been going for a very long time,
Yeah.
and a lot of us have still got email accounts and email addresses that we've had for decades.
Yeah.
I get laughed at sometimes because I have a Hotmail account, but I also have Gmail and that stuff. This is an account I probably opened up in about 1990 or something like that. I don't know. Long, long time ago, probably longer than that. But it doesn't go anywhere so long as you keep your account up to date. So you have got a repository of utterly useless communications about what shall you buy, your ex-girlfriend flowers for a
Mm.
birthday 25 years ago or something. Well, that also means that you've probably got a repository of communications between you and your ex, and the temptation to throw all of that in front of the judge and say, see here, discern from this what a terrible human they are. That's really not going to help.
No, but what it can do, though, on the flip side, if you are being accused of there being some trouble in waters the whole way through, sometimes it might in fact prove, well, hang on a minute, that's not really what happened. You were involved in those decisions, because you often find, I never knew about these decisions. He kept me in the dark. I was never approached on whether or not we should buy this house or that house or get a mortgage and all that sort of stuff. So we get those sorts of questions all the time. You might have an email trail that dates back many years where they've been copied in, and wife has then put her 2 cents in saying, I don't really like that house. We need to move further away, or we need to move here, or it can in fact help you. But we got to bring it back to that issue of relevance. Is it relevant to what you're talking about? If it is, dig it out. If it's not, keep it buried.
Yeah, it's a repository of nothingness in many ways, isn't it? But there can be some gold in there. Again, what we would say with all communication is to keep it civil and keep it on point. And I mean, that's whether you're in a relationship or whether you're not. I mean, you should be being courteous to the person that you're with
Mm.
and everybody around them. If you're not, that'll come across from the history of communication. So be careful with what you type in an email. That will stay out there potentially forever. I mean, everything in the digital world tends to.
Yep.
Very fortunate to have been that generation of people whose childhood had no digital
Mm.
footprint whatsoever. All of the transgressions that may or may not have occurred prior to my attaining at least a couple and a bit decades doesn't exist. Not so for this generation.
No.
There is a whole history that we all grow up with. We've all got nephews and nieces.
Everything is public, and people think, "Oh, no, my profile's set to private." But what you don't realize is that your profile might be set to private, but throughout the years, you and your husband or you and your wife have got mutual friends who are friends with you on Facebook, and you just can't trust which way they're going to go when you guys separate.
Screenshotting is a thing, isn't it?
Screenshotting. So, you've got the likes of Snapchat where you've only got a certain amount of time before the message is gone, but you can still screenshot it when you're reading it. So it's not like it's completely gone.
It's not foolproof, quite far
I
from it.
call Facebook Stalkbook because that's basically what I use it for. I,
You're
I
very good at
stalk
that, aren't
everyone.
you?
I stalk everyone. I stalk my own clients. I stalk the other parties. It just doesn't matter. No one
By
is safe.
stalking, you don't mean it in an illegal sense, do you?
Yeah, no, no,
You're
no, no.
talking about finding out what their profiles are, what they're
Yeah, see
saying,
what
what
they've
they're
been
doing, and
doing.
give
You
them an
know,
opportunity to say, "Hey, maybe you shouldn't be, throwing on all those photographs of you holding a dagger over their heads and super."
And do you know what else is a big one too? Because people have different views about whether or not you post photos of your kids on Facebook.
Mm.
I'm sort of in the middle somewhere. I don't really like it because what you're doing is that your children will be having this Facebook or this digital identity, and they probably do anyway. So I'm not too sure how much by not putting photos out there is actually going to prevent that. But in any event, often parents will have different views. So you'll have one parent who says, "Yeah, no, I'm happy to share every single thing." And you see photos of the kids with their school uniforms, and you can see exactly where they're going to school. And then you've got another parent who's saying, "I don't want my kids to be on the socials at all. I want there to be a restraint that she can't put any photos of our children up on Facebook." And you find out, oh, hang on a minute, you're no longer able to access it, but your friend who's still friends with her can see, oh no, here we are.
And
She's first day of school photos.
there isn't a section within the Family Law Act that deals with whether you can or can't share photographs of your kids on Facebook. It doesn't exist. It falls squarely within a judge saying when they're working out what is in the best interests of the child. Then that means, right, what on earth's been going on in this child's life and what would be the impact of that carrying on? It could sometimes be really positive. If they're, the other parents are far away from one another, it's a means of keeping up to date with what's going on. But otherwise, there might be a reason why they're far apart from one another because one of them is a crazy person and and there are restraining orders around that.
Yeah, totally.
Nuanced completely. So yes, photographs are, yeah, they're very interesting things when we communicate.
Yep.
I certainly have appended various photographs to affidavits I've written over the years on many occasions, either to demonstrate, here are not just like one happy photograph when you're squeezing a child into smiling,
Yep.
but if it's over a series, I mean, we talked about patterns of
Mm.
behavior. And so when you can have adverse patterns like these endless text messages of increasing aggression and threat, you can also have, as you say, those emails that will show everything's been fine on an even keel. And you can
Mm.
have photographs that show actually they've been doing stuff together.
Yeah.
It's pretty normal.
We went
And
on
it's over a
holidays
prolonged
together.
holiday.
We all went
Yeah.
we had lots of fun together.
And then you
Here's
read in the
photos of us
affidavit on
having
the
a
other
great
side,
time.
yeah, this monstrous, it was terrible, it was awful, and it doesn't add up. And it's difficult for a judge to try and who they're going to believe. You got
That's
photographic
right.
evidence of something.
And that's even with things like the property settlement itself, if you just agree on those figures, they're not binding. But if you've acted on that and that the parties have gone down this pathway, and it does provide some compelling evidence as to things that have happened in the past, and you might be able to, for example, agree on facts and say, look, I'm happy with these things, and say, I know that we both agree that you were the breadwinner I was the homemaker. It's a long relationship. We really need to sort this out somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. I
It
think,
might be something as simple as that.
yeah,
And
or it could be
whilst it's not
about,
going to be,
sorry, go on.
no, I was going to say, whilst it's not binding as such, you can't be held to that. What it does do is it provides a fair bit of weight if a judge has to then decide. If you then change your mind and say, no, 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 I did the lot. I
Yes.
did
So it
everything.
shows the contrast, doesn't it, between the then and the now. And
Totally.
it could be things like, I mean, this pops up a little bit. I know we've talked about this before, where you have these family loan situations
Yeah.
when after a relationship's ended, they say, "Oh no, your dad never did lend us that money, or it was never due to be paid back." But there could be a whole stream of evidence suggesting that actually that was going to be paid back, for example, and it needs to be taken into account. Or quite the opposite. Hey kids, here's a gift. I have to show it as a loan on my accounts, but don't
Yeah,
worry
that's
about it.
right.
So, and it's how you treat those things. So everything within its own little space. Communication, we're kind of lucky in a way as lawyers practicing now because there is a massive pool of information available to us.
Too
The
much.
hardest part is, yes, far too much. We over communicate. All of us do. We
Mm,
have these wretched little smartphones with us the whole time that track our steps and tell us, listen, Tubby, go for another walk. Or it might be ordering, as I say, the pizza with the Apollo spacecraft,
mm.
capability. We have all that stuff, but we don't know when to stop, which means that you and I as lawyers can go, brilliant. There's going to be things in here that will support either case.
Yeah.
And then it becomes more about discernment. So if you're going to go through a family law situation, in other words, if you've been separated for a while or you think that's on the cusp, I would just say think carefully about the messages that you're sending. Think carefully about the social media posts that you're putting out there. You started off this podcast by saying something which I think is really pertinent, and it's nothing to do with the FIFA World Cup. God help me, I can't even think about that now. But it was to do with how would you like it if a judge is looking at this? Would
Yeah.
you want a judge to read that social media post? Would you want them to read those 57 text messages? Because if you end up in a court, and a lot of people do go to court and then luckily settle it before you get there. But if you're one of the unlucky 10% that wind up in a final hearing, you do not want, aggressive, attacking, repetitive, endless messages to be read
Mm.
by a judge because they'll go, you can't co-parent. You can't communicate. You've contradicted yourself 1,000 times over. How can we put you guys together to make decisions for kids into the future when one of you is just overloading the whole time? So it can really come back and kick you in the backside if you over communicate. Under communication, potentially. If you never reply to anything, it looks like you're disengaged.
That's right.
It's get a bit of balance.
Thumbs up. Thumbs up works every time.
I'd say this as well. I mean, we talk about communication. Of course, you and I are both fighting the good fight against ChatGPT and all of that.
Mm,
Because if you are going through any kind of a legal dispute, whether it's family law or otherwise, or
mm,
if you start chucking in your and your ex's confidential information, that just means your names, your details, through one of those, those large language model AI, chat GPTs and so on, you're probably breaching your duties if you're in court already in terms of publishing information. You're opening up the idea that you may have lost legal professional privilege if you're putting anything from your lawyers in there. You're opening up the idea that that could be subpoenaed. I think we'll be seeing cases over the coming years when AI models and the owners, the organization behind those are receiving subpoenas to provide copies of
mhm.
what's been put into them and what's been spat out of them. I certainly see clients and from other people that are very obviously authored by somebody other than that person, because if you've met them, you think, oh, it's not their natural language.
Totally.
And it's
But
got elongated hyphens and it's got bullet points and giant headers in it.
yeah. Look, but there is a small place for ChatGPT when it comes to communication, and I preface it on this basis only. If you're not a good wordsmith, if you're not good with your words, and you really just want to say to someone, please sod off. You're being an idiot. I can't stand you. Can you stop talking to me? But you want to put it in a nice way that's not going to bite you in the butt. You write this into ChatGPT. Maybe a judge might read this one day. So please do not make this offensive and make this as pleasant as possible. But I want to tell him to bugger off. How do I say that nicely? It's no details, no specifics, no nothing about your case. It's just more of a pleasant way of shutting the other party down in order to stop the communication. That's my very limited suggestion in terms of using ChatGPT and those sorts of services, because it just helps. Sometimes you do. I often will go to you, I'll draft something and I'll go, oh, it's a bit nasty. Lex, do you think you could take out some of the adjectives and make it sound a bit nicer for me? We do that from time to time because there's a lot of emotion in this. Sometimes you need to say what you really want to say and then have it rephrased, rewrite so that it's nicer. And, everyone's going to read it and go, oh, thanks, ChatGPT. But hey, the message is still there. The message is still, please stop. Please stop messaging me. Please stop sending me 17 paragraphs of stuff all in capital letters. I don't want to hear from you, but you want to make it sound in a way that you're not going to get crucified for the way that you've reacted or responded. And if you aren't sure about that, that's the very limited way I would probably use it.
I definitely see that that's something you could use a ChatGPT type model for. I generally would still advocate against it.
Yeah.
I'd far rather that my client, if they've come to me, I'm saying to them, I mean, the risk of bursting out into song and sounding like Ronan Keating, which isn't going to happen. Sometimes you say it best when you say nothing at all. It's
yeah.
just, do I have to reply to this? And then we can't, we're in a real interesting time as a society with all of the AI models and everything like that. But we're falling into the trap of using that to answer everything for us and to think for us. I'd far rather my clients just say, actually, what's being asked of me? I probably should reply. And then go back to when you were scuffed kneed and with jam down your front, and you're a little kid and you're being taught your manners.
Oh, wait, you just qualified that when you were a little kid. I think you met last week.
Pleases and thank yous, it goes a long way. Be courteous. You don't have to like somebody to be polite to them. That's all. Come back to what would a judge think if they were reading this? Is this a polite request that's focused upon something that does need to be dealt with? Or maybe you're saying, I would prefer it if you didn't send me 47,000 messages over the course of one evening. Thank you very much. And let's leave it at that. You don't need to get into a dialect. Don't go back and forth. It's not about playing table tennis. That helps nobody.
You're
Those
not going to
verbal
win
games
in a
that we
text
see.
message.
And it overwhelms what is maybe a small issue. And then the issue becomes all about this. Well, you said this and he said this and she said that. Let's cut to the heart of it. I wrote something down that you said at the start, and I'm going to turn it around. So you said, don't say what you think. And I think if we can use those same words, think what you say. There you go. I think that will probably wrap us on communication. So it's a huge topic in family law. If you're not sure whether you should send something, you probably are sure that you shouldn't.
Was that advice directed at me, Alex? I know that's what usually happens.
Not at all. Not at all. How could I ever stop you from communicating, Liza? Nor would I ever want to. Yeah. If you've got questions about this podcast, communicating, what should I say? I need to get this message across. It's not being listened to. Reach out to us. I'm Alex Wynne, Liza Friedwell. We're both family lawyers. We can, we will have seen most of these things that may be entirely unique. We've seen nuanced versions of them. We'll be able to give you some guidance there. So do feel free to reach out. Or if you have any questions that you want to put to us.
Sounds great. Okay. See you next time. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.